I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of my penthouse office, 48 stories above downtown Chicago, watching the city's lights bleed into the twilight. Below, a stream of employees spilled out into the streets, among them, my father, stepmother, and half-brother, oblivious to the truth. They worked for me. 7 years ago, they had exiled me from our home, branding me a failure. Now they cashed paychecks from Titan Innovations, the tech empire I had built from nothing, still unaware that I was the founder and CEO. Miss Adams, Claire's voice crackled over the intercom, calm and precise. The town hall is finalized for tomorrow. Are you certain you want to proceed? I traced the cool glass with my fingertips and allowed myself a small, wry smile. Yes, I said, it's time. The memory of that night remained seared into me. I was 19, fresh from a small Midwestern college with a degree in software engineering, not the finance degree my father demanded. You'll never survive without a real career, he had barked across the kitchen table. Nobody gets rich writing code in a basement. Meanwhile, my half-brother Ryan, the golden boy, was already clerking for a prestigious firm, already parading plans for his MBA. When I refused the junior bank position my father had lined up, his fury was volcanic. If you're too proud for our help, get out. I had 30 minutes to pack. Lydia, my stepmother, had watched from the hallway, arms crossed, expressionless. This is for the best, Rachel, she said, voice flat. A little failure might teach you humility. Ryan just laughed as he opened the door. I left with a battered laptop, $150 in cash, and a stubborn dream. The first startup I joined was brilliant in code, catastrophic in leadership. When it imploded 6 months later, I seized the chance. I pitched a plan to salvage the tech, rebuild the team, lead it the right way. Investors hesitated. I was too young, too raw, too unknown, but I was relentless, and my skill undeniable. They gambled on me. By 22, Titan Innovations was thriving. By 26, it was one of the Midwest's fastest rising stars. I had stayed invisible, hiding my ownership behind shell companies, letting our charismatic COO play the public face. But tomorrow, at our annual town hall, the mask would fall. Tomorrow, my family would finally see who they had been working for. And this time, I wouldn't be the one leaving. 3 years ago, Titan quietly bought the Riverfront Tower, the same building where my father's law firm struggled for survival. I could have evicted them. Instead, I offered them lifelines. My father, once a senior partner, was now an in-house legal advisor. Lydia became an administrative coordinator. And Ryan, the former golden boy, accepted a junior compliance role, his career floundering. Some nights, I would watch them on the security feeds. My father, stooped and hurried, clutching his coffee. Lydia, orchestrating potlucks like promotions depended on them. Ryan, his perfect suits hiding the desperate tilt of his shoulders. They were proud to work here. Through whispers carried by mutual acquaintances, blissfully unaware who they spoke of, I heard everything. My new company values real hard work. My father would crow at gatherings I was never invited to. At Titan, talent gets noticed, Lydia would say with conviction. If only they knew. The CEO they speculated about was the same daughter, the same sister, they had deemed worthless. Now, standing in my glass tower, on the cusp of the moment I'd been building toward for years, I remembered the nights coding until sunrise, the endless rejections, the gnawing doubt, the loneliness of proving the world wrong. A soft knock at the door. Miss Adams, Claire said, stepping inside. The final preparations are complete. Attendance is confirmed. I turned from the window. How many employees are in the building now? Just over 3,200. Your family's seats are front and center, executive section. I nodded and picked up the only photo on my desk. A snapshot from my college graduation. I stared at the girl in the cap and gown, young, unscarred, still believing love was unconditional. Claire hesitated. Are you ready for this? I placed the photo back on the desk. I'm ready, I said. It's time they see exactly who they tried to bury, and who refused to die. Tomorrow wasn't just about revealing my identity. It was about unveiling Titan's latest game-changer, an AI legal platform poised to revolutionize everything traditional law firms relied on. The timing felt almost poetic. The daughter they'd cast aside had built the very future they would soon depend on. My phone buzzed. An email from my father. It was addressed to the department head, but it was clear he hadn't meant for me to see it. Excited to finally meet the mysterious CEO tomorrow, hoping it's someone who truly understands what real success looks like. I couldn't help the slow, knowing smile that tugged at my lips. He was about to find out. I have some suggestions about restructuring the legal department, his email concluded. I smiled, a little tighter this time. He still believed his outdated mindset was the key to success, still convinced that connections, not innovation, were what mattered. Tomorrow, I would shatter those illusions. Claire entered my office, a dark blue folder in her hands. Your speech notes for tomorrow, though, honestly, I doubt you'll need them. I took the folder, feeling the weight of 10 years of blood, sweat, and battles settle into my palms. 10 years, I murmured, 10 years of turning Titan Innovations from a dream into a powerhouse. 10 years of my family working under my roof, cashing checks signed by the daughter they discarded, never knowing who they were really working for. I turned back to the window, watching the city hum beneath me, lights flickering like stars come to earth. And in that moment, I realized, this wasn't about revenge anymore. It never had been. It was about rewriting the very definition of success, about proving that it doesn't always come from the polished, predictable favorite. Sometimes, it comes from the outcast, the underestimated one, the so-called failure. Claire, I called as she neared the door. Alert security. Tomorrow might get emotional. She nodded without asking questions. We both knew. When my family realized who had been pulling the strings all this time, the fallout would be seismic. But I was ready. I hadn't built an empire by running from confrontation. Tomorrow, the daughter they threw away would show them exactly what useless could do. The company auditorium was packed. More than 3,000 employees filled every seat, the air alive with anticipation. For a decade, Titan Innovations' CEO had been nothing more than a rumor, a phantom in the corporate world. Today, that myth would take on human form. I stood behind a wall of two-way glass in the prep room, watching the front rows fill with familiar faces. There they were, my father, sitting a little straighter than usual, smoothing down his tie, no doubt rehearsing the advice he'd planned to offer the CEO. Lydia, fiddling with her outfit, eager to talk about her charity connections. Ryan, checking his reflection in his phone, hoping the CEO would be his ticket to a real promotion. 2 minutes, Claire whispered, handing me a bottle of water. I took a sip, staring at my reflection in the glass. Gone was the 19-year-old girl they'd cast aside. In her place stood a woman in a perfectly tailored navy suit, poised, composed, and undeniably powerful. The CLO's voice echoed across the auditorium, his words carrying the weight of Titan's success. He spoke of our rise from a struggling startup to a titan of the tech industry. He spoke of our AI breakthroughs, our rapid growth, our disruption of outdated systems. And then, he reached the climax. And now, he said, smiling toward the wings, the moment you've all been waiting for. Please welcome Titan Innovations founder and CEO, the visionary behind it all. I stepped forward. The moment had come. I emerged into the spotlight. The auditorium fell into stunned silence. Then I heard it, the sharp intake of breath from Lydia, the strangled gasp from my father, the sound of Ryan's coffee cup shattering on the floor. Good morning, I said into the microphone, my voice calm, steady, and unwavering. I'm Rachel Adams, though some of you once knew me by a different name. Welcome to Titan Innovations. A ripple of shock spread through the room. Whispers buzzed like electricity as employees, many of whom had worked alongside me for years without realizing it, began to connect the dots. The elusive CEO, the force behind Titan's meteoric rise, had been hidden in plain sight. 7 years ago, I continued, my voice cutting through the murmur. I was told I was worthless, that my passion for technology was foolish. That true success only came from tradition, status, and knowing the right people. I let my eyes drift across the front row. My father's face had gone ashen. Lydia gripped the sides of her chair so tightly that her knuckles had turned bone white. Ryan sat motionless, his jaw slack, disbelief etched into every line of his face. The people who dismissed me, I said, my voice steady, have been working under this roof for the past 3 years. I gestured subtly toward them. Recognition flickered across the audience, the legal counsel, the office administrator, the junior compliance officer, all of them connected by blood, but still blind to the truth of who I really was. But this moment, I continued, my tone softening, isn't about revenge, it's about innovation, it's about seeing potential where others see none, it's about believing in yourself, even when no one else does. I clicked the remote, and the massive screens behind me lit up with a sleek, polished demonstration. Today, we unveil Titan Lex, a revolutionary AI legal research platform. It can process millions of case files, predict litigation outcomes with unmatched accuracy, and reshape the entire legal profession. The irony didn't escape me, nor did it escape my family. The daughter they'd thrown away for wasting time with computers had just rewritten the very foundation of their esteemed, traditional careers. The presentation flowed seamlessly. The technology was beyond anything the industry had ever seen, faster, smarter, and utterly transformative. As the final slide faded and I closed my speech, the applause was deafening. Employees leapt to their feet, cheering not just for Titan Lex, but for the truth that had finally been revealed. Security moved swiftly, but discreetly, guiding my family to my private office upstairs. I stayed a few minutes longer, answering questions, feeling the electric hum of a new era crackling through the room. Then, with a quiet resolve, I made my way up. They were waiting when I entered. My father, pacing furiously, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Lydia, perched stiffly in a chair, avoiding my gaze. Ryan, staring blankly out the window, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. How? My father finally spluttered, the words almost choking in his throat. How did I build a multi-billion-dollar company? I finished, my voice calm, unfazed, with the skills you mocked, with the technology you dismissed, and with the determination you tried so hard to crush. Rachel, Lydia began, her voice trembling slightly, as though unsure of what to say next. We only wanted what was best for you. I sat behind my desk, my real desk, not the modest one they'd seen me use all these years. No, I replied, setting my old graduation photo down gently. You wanted what looked best to your friends. There's a difference. Ryan turned from the window, his face drained of color. All this time, he whispered, his voice small, you were our boss. Ironic, isn't it? I leaned back in my chair, my gaze steady. The daughter you cast aside ended up signing your paychecks. My father straightened, trying to summon some semblance of authority, the last shreds of his pride hanging on by a thread. Now listen here, young lady. I held up a hand, cutting him off. You don't get to play the father card now. You forfeited that right the night you gave me 30 minutes to pack my life into a duffel bag. I stood, adjusting the lapels of my jacket as if the weight of everything that had led to this moment was now firmly on my shoulders. You're all excellent employees, I said, voice steady and unyielding. Your performance reviews are strong. You'll keep your jobs. But I imagine family dinners will feel a little different now. You're letting us stay? Lydia whispered, her eyes wide with disbelief. Like I said, I replied, my tone unwavering. This was never about revenge. It's about showing that success doesn't have just one face. Sometimes, it comes from the person you least expect. They left my office silently, their faces pale and shattered, their sense of quiet superiority stripped away. They were left with the undeniable truth. The daughter they once called useless now held their careers in the palm of her hand. In the months that followed, things changed in ways they hadn't anticipated. My father's restructuring proposals? They gathered dust, ignored by an industry that had already moved forward. Titan Lex rendered most of his outdated suggestions obsolete before they even reached my desk. Lydia's cherished social connections, the charity boards, the golf club cliques, meant nothing here. At Titan, we valued innovation, merit, and resilience, not cocktail party chatter. Ryan struggled the most. For the first time, he realized that true advancement didn't come from handshakes and name-dropping, it came from results. But something else changed too, something I hadn't expected. Slowly, cautiously, they began to see me not as the stubborn, disappointing daughter who refused to walk their carefully laid path, but as someone who had carved her own. Family dinners resumed, but they were different now, held in my penthouse overlooking the skyline. And the conversations had changed as well, less about appearances, more about ideas, about creativity, about what it truly meant to succeed. They learned to listen. They learned to see that success doesn't always wear a banker's tie or a lawyer's suit. I kept my old workspace in the engineering wing, where employees, now fully aware of who I was, still welcomed me as a peer. It kept me grounded. It reminded me why I built Titan, not to prove my family wrong, but to prove to myself, and to anyone who doubted me, that useless was just another word for unlimited. The old graduation photo still sat on my desk. But now, it had company, a new photo from last year's company picnic. My family was in it, smiling for the first time in a long while. We weren't perfect, but we were learning. And me? I was exactly where I was meant to be, running the empire they once told me I would never build. If this story resonates with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support means more than you know, not just to me, But to everyone out there who has ever been told they weren't enough, tell me, have you ever been underestimated, doubted, or cast aside? I want to hear your journey, your triumphs, even the battles you're still fighting. Remember, success isn't defined by fitting into someone else's mold. It's defined by the fire you refuse to let burn out, even when the world tries to snuff it. If you're in a place where it feels like no one believes in you, let me be the first to say, you are capable of extraordinary things. Keep building. Keep dreaming. Keep rising. Even when it's quiet. Especially when it's quiet. Because one day, the people who couldn't see your light will have no choice but to stand in its brilliance. Leave a comment. Share your story. And if you're ready, take that first step toward the life they told you was impossible. You're not useless. You're unlimited. And the world hasn't even seen your best yet.